Hey out there, legal warriors. Did you ever wonder how attorneys, especially criminal defense attorneys, decide what to charge for their services? There's going to be a lot of factors, and it may not be everything that you've thought about. So if you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Lynnwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington state for more than 25 years. I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. What a touchy subject. How do criminal defense attorneys decide what to charge? You notice I said criminal defense attorneys because as a rule of thumb, at least in Washington state, each industry, each type of attorney, as a general industry of type of attorney, have certain ways of charging people, right? Now, family law attorneys, almost all of them will charge hourly. And that's why you sort of have an unlimited bill. If you unfortunately need to hire a family law attorney, right? They're going to take money in trust. They're going to have an evergreen trust where you keep adding to the trust. When they bill you every time they think about your case, they're charging them $400 an hour. God knows what they're charging. And there's sort of no end in sight. And then for personal injury type attorneys, they usually take a percentage, right? If there's a settlement, they'll usually take something like a third. You're not paying that attorney any money out of pocket typically. And once they get a recovery, they are taking their fees from that recovery. And there's reasons why that happens that way, because if a personal injury attorney was billing a client by the hour, most clients wouldn't have the ability to pay them and then get justice and get a recovery. And that's why for that part of the industry, that's how it goes. I think family law is hourly because the more they charge someone, the more they can sort of hopefully force them to settle these emotional issues, right? Family law is very emotional. And therefore, if it's going to cost us $5,000 to argue over the $2,000 couch, maybe we won't argue so much about the couch, right? That's why I think it works that way. Criminal lawyers typically always charge a flat rate. And the reason why I believe the criminal lawyer industry is a flat rate is not to benefit the lawyer, that's for sure. It benefits the client because usually, as you've watched the station, you know that time helps cases when it comes to the defendant. The older the case gets, usually the better the case gets for a defendant because witnesses lose interest, witnesses disappear, people forget. There's more time for the client to do affirmatives. Affirmative actions is more time to prove themselves by staying out of trouble. Generally, if the criminal attorney who needs to delay a case for lots of different reasons, if it costs the client more money when the case was delayed, the client likely wouldn't let the attorney delay the case, which might be necessary for case outcomes, and therefore the results would be worse. Also, it sets up mistrust, right? Hey, you're only delaying this to make more money. Well, in a flat rate, that's not true. And the one thing you can't have when your freedom's at stake is mistrust between criminal attorney and client in a criminal matter. And so that's the main reason why I think the industry works that way, is because it gives enough leeway for the attorney to sort of take the burden of taking on more time and more work without the client running out of money, because typically speaking, I think criminal attorneys are a different breed. We're trying to do justice. We're trying to save people. We're not trying to make the maximum amount of money, because other areas of the law, in my opinion, there's more sort of top end if you're just looking from a business perspective. So we're a little bit different. So how do we decide? How do us criminal attorneys decide what to charge? Well, I think there's about 3 to 4 different factors that we consider. I think factor number 1 is how hard is the case? How much effort is going to have to go into the case to be able to try to get the result that the client needs, right? Is the prosecutor super difficult and we know it's going to be a really long road, or is the prosecutor more reasonable and it's going to be a shorter road? And we're going to take that into account. How difficult is the fact pattern of the case to try to get an outcome that is wanted by the client? I think number 2, and this is what most people out there don't understand, is it a client we want to work for? Is this person going to be a good partner? Are they going to be an A client and working with us and trust us to do our best and follow our instructions? Or are they going to be trying to micromanage the case? Are they going to be telling us how to do the job and thinking they know best, right? And how much anxiety do we have to take on from the client? And how much do we need to try to solve that? Now, my firm, that's sort of what we're known for. We're known for lowering clients' anxieties, and we're pretty forgiving and understanding when it comes to going through this worst thing in your life. But, if we have someone call up who is super rude or super demanding, if we even quote a rate, I guarantee you it's going to be higher rate than someone who is super kind and super cooperative, and because that's an easier person to work with. And remember, we're billing only one time, just one flat rate, and so we have to make the right decision for us personally in trying to decide, can we provide the services for a rate that we think is fair. Number 3 would be how easy or hard it is to get the actual client's needed results in the time frame that's needed. So it's a little bit of, what does the client actually need and how quickly is it needed? And that's usually considered in non-citizen cases. In many cases, if someone is unfortunate enough to be charged with a crime and they're not a citizen, there's going to be some timing issues that don't apply to other types of people that are already a citizen, right? If we have an H-1B visa that needs to be renewed, when does it need to be renewed, right? Many law firms don't even know to ask that, right? Because if there's a pending charge, well, we may need to get that visa renewed so our skilled needed worker can stay. It may not be possible to resolve a case quickly enough with low enough risk to make that a very possibly successful outcome in the source. If it's going to be harder to thread the needle, it's going to be more difficult, well, then obviously we're going to have to charge more. Additionally, are the client's demands, reasonable? Hey, I'm on tape stabbing somebody. I want a dismissal because I'm going to sue the police, right? Well, if we were sort of stupid enough to take that case, we would be charging a lot more because of the demands of the client versus how likely we were able to actually get the outcome. And so, we ask a lot of questions as attorneys, right? That's, what we need to find out. And I think I'm going to go with number 4, and the simplest way to put it, and is what I tell any type of potential client who's calling our firm, is we have to think about how much emotional and physical pain working this case is going to cause both the firm and the lawyer personally. If we take on a case that we know is going to take 3 attorneys in 2 years to try to save, and it's a long shot to save them, and we really like the client and we really think it's unjust, believe it or not, great defense attorneys care more than anything what happens to their clients. We care desperately. We suffer. We work together. We never are not thinking about the case. And so to take on that type of case, typically if we're going to do it, it's going to be a higher rate because of the demands it puts on the staff, the risk to the staff's, even continuing to work for the lawyer, for the law firm, the risk emotionally breaking down, all these things, because we only get the one chance to save somebody, right? We have lots and lots of cases, but for the client, it's their only case. And that's what we have to remember. Another factor that people often forget about is what is the prior record of the potential client. If someone has 4 or 5 priors, or they have a checkered criminal history, it's going to be harder to get that result. So generally speaking, someone with a clean record may get a lower rate than someone that has a worse criminal record. And also a corollary to that is, does this case trigger negative actions in another case? Let's say you're on probation for a DUI and you get a suspended license charge or an interlock charge. And well, I'm only hiring for the interlock or the suspended license charge, so it shouldn't be that expensive. But if you're on probation for a DUI, if we're convicted of any of those those other 2 charges, even for the case we don't represent you on, that DUI probation, that's going to trigger 30 days in jail. Mandatory for each one of those convictions. So that's a much harder case to defend because guess what? The prosecutor knows that too. They're not stupid. They're going to try to hold the line on the interlock charge and the suspended license example here because they know it's going to trigger 30 days there. If you don't have a prior DUI, they're not going to think about it as much, right? It doesn't trigger those adverse consequences. So when we have a prior record that's bad, you're generally going to get a higher rate. And also, if you have an outcome in this current case that's going to trigger negative things in another case, you're also probably going to get a higher rate than that. These are just factors, okay? But generally, think about this way. The more jeopardy that's involved, generally the more you're likely going to have to pay to defend it, especially since criminal attorneys are just offering this typically a single flat rate. We don't get to go back and change it if we're wrong about how hard it's going to be or how long it's going to take. And so all these factors sort of combine to how hard is it going to be on us to be able to get what the client needs in a way the client needs it. How likely is it? Because we don't want to take cases where it's unlikely we're going to get a success. This is attorneys in general. I'm saying we, but I'm talking criminal defense attorneys, right? There's exceptions to every rule. There's bad attorneys who'll just take anything and sell their client down the river, but those aren't going to be attorneys that you call because they're not going to have any good reviews, right? So how we decide what to charge, how hard is it? Where is it? How good or bad is the client in helping with this? And it all sort of adds up to how painful is it to try to be on that edge between morality and freedom. Us defense attorneys are deciding how to redefine cases, to redefine actions, to help the clients protect themselves, to help them thinking about themselves differently. We're standing up against the government and society, trying to protect people from their lives being ruined for some supposed bad day. So hopefully that makes you understand how we decide what to charge. Also, attorneys generally, the ones that are in more demand, do a better job, they're going to charge more because they have to, because there's just limited capacity about what we can do. So if you want a cheaper attorney, look for a lower rated attorney. They're going to be cheaper. If you need a better outcome, look for a higher rated attorney. They're going to cost more. It's like anything. Better car costs more than a cheaper car. But if you want to try to, help get a lower rate when you're talking to an attorney, just be a better client. Be a better client, be more understanding, be more like someone that we want to help, because just like you have an option about who you hire, attorneys have an option about who we let retain us. So I hope that helps. I hope it makes sense. And if you have a legal problem in Washington, if you have a criminal matter, feel free to reach out to our firm. We get on board, we'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.